kind of sat down and looked over the numbers and kind of projections. I had a financial advisor with me and decided to kind of jump into it and see where I was going to go. So I owned my first company before I turned 21.
Oh, wow. And so some people knew that you owned the tea company, but what was it? What did it start out as? What was the name of it, and then what did you transition it to?
So
I guess tell the story of that.
for me, it was always infused tea company, and then I had a
Boop boop beep pop pop deep. So, ladies and gentlemen, another episode of the Boom Show, going over some people you guys kind of know but are getting to know a lot better. Today we have the one and only Raymond Ritola. That's how I say his last name. Ray, pronounce your last name for everyone.
Ritola.
I said it right. Sometimes we call him Ritalin, sometimes Ritola. But yeah, Ritola.
There you go.
Right? And what's the we'll get into that later. Ray is a head coach. He's the handyman. He's the GM of OG. He does a lot of things around here. He's been with us for 4
years.
4 years, right?
As a coach, I want to say 5 years. No, just under 5 years then as a athlete.
Right. So Ray has been here for a while, pretty much almost the entire time Berg's been around. We're going to get into who he is, what he's about, what he does here, specifically at the end. And anyway, Ray, tell us how old you are, where you are originally from, and yeah, start with that.
We're 32 now, right? It's 31 or 32. I don't know.
Right? You forget post 30.
It's another day.
Yeah. And then where are you originally from?
I was born in the suburbs of Chicago, on the southwest side. Then migrated to Ohio from there, migrated up to Connecticut after that, and then came down here for college and just didn't leave.
Gotcha. Cool. So how long, I guess, let's break down the timeline now. What was, how long were you in Chicago?
3 years.
So you were young.
Yep.
Young. You don't remember Chicago?
Not really, no. Little bits of little things here and there, but most of it's stories are told to me.
Got it. And then you went to Ohio?
Yep, lived there for 5 years.
Okay, so you remember Ohio?
A lot more than Chicago.
What part of Ohio?
Kind of north central. It was right in between Akron and Canton, in a small Amish town called Uniontown.
Union?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, all right. And family, tell us about your family. But you got siblings?
I've got 2 older sisters.
Okay. So they were there. They were there. And then after Ohio, where'd you go again?
We migrated up to Connecticut.
And then how long were you there?
Pretty much I was there through college. I mean, in essence, it's when it came down to my senior year and kind of my junior year, I spent the majority of my time here. And the summers, I still kind of made my way up there in such that regard. But with some perks that I had kind of available to me in such that way, my freshman and sophomore year, I was able to basically fly for free. And so I'd say every other month I was flying up to kind of visit the family. And
how'd you fly for free?
My sister worked for the company.
Oh, okay, cool. Very cool. So your family's still up there?
My immediate family is still in New England. The 99% of the rest of my family is all still in Illinois.
Gotcha. Okay. So you came down to Florida after high school, right? Yeah. And you went to Eckerd?
Yep.
Right? So would you I guess before we get into what you studied at Eckerd, like what'd you do growing up? You know, what were your hobbies? Like how'd you get in, trying to make some connections towards where you're at now maybe or who you are now. So what were some of your hobbies? What'd you do growing up? You play sports?
I played baseball kind of predominantly growing up when I was younger. Played it for 9 years, something like that. Did community league basketball. My high school, I went to a marine bio-based high school, so I had 2 teams, rowing and sailing. And sailing was kind of a joke. You kind of just floated around. We didn't take it all that seriously. And then rowing was the people that were way too serious in regards to it. So I kind of dabbled a little bit in both, but for the most part, just kind of did community leagues and everything there.
Huh.
Most of my athletic basis and stuff, I mean, I always enjoyed playing sports, but I'd say really kind of kicked off in college.
So what'd you do? Okay. So other than sports, you played baseball, you rowed and sailed
A little bit,
a little bit, right? Sailing was for the fun days and rowing was for the serious days.
Not one of those serious days.
What else did you do growing up? What sort of hobbies did you have?
A lot of middle school and such there. I did BMX biking. And then I worked, truthfully.
What was your first job?
I worked at a pet store in the fish department.
Oh, all right. Did you have aquariums?
Yes.
And how old were you when you did this?
I started working when I was 15 or 16.
Okay.
16 probably. And I was working long enough where it took me a year to get my driver's license since I had my permit, because I was doing 40 to 60 hours a week, depending on the time of the year.
Interesting.
Explains a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, right there. So what sort of fish tanks did you have? What sort of fish?
Did everything. It started off dabbling in freshwater because it's the easiest one.
Yeah.
But got into, they're called discus, or discus, which are really fancy Amazonian freshwater fish. They're kind of a pain to take care of.
They have specific pH levels, don't they?
Yes, pH levels, environments, everything kind of in relation to that.
They look like a sand dollar, right?
Yep, but with a bunch of little crazy quirly little lines and stuff on them.
Yeah.
And blues and reds and all kinds of fluorescent colors and such that way.
Yeah.
They looked just absolutely awesome.
I something you don't know about me. I used to have a ton of fish tanks, and that was one fish I never got into, but telling the audience more about, not everyone's into fish tanks. But those are really cool fish. But I knew
they're kind of the reef fish of freshwater.
Yeah, they're very temperamental fish, though.
Yes.
They're really beautiful fish, but temperamental fish. So you did that, and then you got saltwater tanks, I assume?
Got into coral reefs and did the full 9 and everything like that. My sophomore year, I think I had invested something like $13,000 into a fish tank.
Jeez. How big was that tank? Was it a big tank or just a lot of corals?
75-gallon display, but I did a custom filtration system. Literally cut holes through my parents' floor, had it in the basement, so I had better temperature regulation.
Of course you did.
Did full acrylic. Yep.
So we can call Ray the engineer because he likes to over-engineer everything, but it's a good problem most of the time.
Yeah,
sometimes it's more of a headache. So that's pretty cool. So you're big into fish tanks. You had all those aquariums, and obviously you made your way down here to Eckerd, which is how you fell. I assume continued that venture with water and.
Originally, yes. I started off Eckerd College, had a good marine bio-based program. I was looking at that in Roger Williams and Rhode Island. The weather down here is substantially nicer. And so a lot more to kind of drive me down here. Having the ability to go, it's like I was kind of worried about the distance from the family and everything like that. But having the ability to kind of fly back at my leisure really kind of eliminated all of those kind of caveats. So it worked out really nice first couple of years, and then I finally kind of got into my own skin and got comfortable being 1,300 miles away from my family, and here we are.
Yeah. So did you play? You said you played sports in college too?
Rugby.
Oh, okay.
It's a club sport. There is no intercollegiate varsity style sport for rugby. It's all collegiate, but the 4 years. First year, there was some kind of logistical issue stuff because we cared more about the state and nationals than we did about what the Florida schools created, which was called the Florida Cup. And because our semester started later than everybody else, they always kind of fought us on it because they wanted us to have matches when we technically weren't in school. And we're like, So they tried to always claim them as forfeits. And we're like, no. We're not in school. We're not actively enrolled, so you can't really make us try and have a match when
you're not around.
Yeah, when we're not enrolled.
So you started that at freshman year. You just jumped on with a team, a group of guys.
Yep. And then sophomore year, we actually had a awesome coach and stuff like that who had done training and ran a bunch of teams. Last I knew, he moved back to New Zealand and is coaching back there. But we made it to kind of the national things where we had to drive up to Atlanta, Georgia, and literally went against what was it, Georgia Tech. So a college of 35,000 people with this little college of 2,500 kids, and literally had to go off and play one of the biggest teams that we've had to ever deal with. And
that's pretty cool. How'd you guys do?
We lost, needless to say.
Yeah.
Plays it the easy way. But it's funny enough, the best way you can look at it is rugby kind of tailors to the ones that weren't good enough to make the football team or were too roided out and couldn't pass the drug tests. So
which one were you?
No football team for record. That's the good part. So there were some very overly sized boys for Georgia Tech that way. It's can't say I'm going to be able to verify whether or not they were on them or not, but
they were big.
Yeah.
Do you have any bad injuries? From rugby? What's your one injury you have? Rugby's pretty brutal.
From rugby specifically, it's probably a severe ankle sprain for me. We had one guy who broke his collarbone, clavicle, and then managed to come back from that and then broke his eye socket and was basically told he's not allowed to do this anymore. Dislocated shoulders are one of the most common that you always hear about because people don't know how to tackle right, and then concussions and such that way.
It's a fun stuff.
Yeah.
So you played rugby, and then what were you studying in school?
I started off as a marine bio major. It's what kind of from my work that I did and stuff like that in high school,
right.
School that I went to. Quickly realized it's way too concentrated of a field. It was going to require me to go to grad school, and I was still going to have a very finite opportunities and such like that for employment out of it. And so I almost didn't go to college. I almost went to a trade school and started my own business. So getting through school was probably the quickest thing that I wanted to do. So I ended up finishing with a major in environmental studies, a minor in coastal management, and concentrations in chemistry and international business. If I'd stayed for a half a semester longer, I would have double majored, double minored, single major, triple minored. And if I'd stayed for another year, I could have double majored, double minored. But I was ready to be done.
Sounds complicated.
I took liberal arts to the fullest. So
yeah.
There's no question about that.
So out of college now, what'd you end up getting into?
I made attempts to kind of pursue my field of study and such in relation to it. And a lot of the stuff just didn't really, I guess, appeal to me within it. It's working with, so I'm trying to remember now in a lot of regards. There's one where it's like I was working with fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, and such there, and trying to ensure that it's how it works, interactions with retention ponds within the state of Florida, ensuring that you don't screw up the ecological diversity and such in relation to all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually probably could have been a real cool job. It's just the commuting would have been just absolutely terrible. But ultimately, I ended up just picking up a job at a local tea company. And then within 5 months, I was promoted to manager. And 4 months after that, they asked if I was interested in taking over the company. Kind of sat down and looked over the numbers and kind of projections. I had a financial advisor with me and decided to kind of jump into it and see where I was going to go. So I owned my first company before I turned 21.
Oh, wow. And so some people knew that you owned the tea company, but what was it? What did it start out as? What was the name of it? And then what did you transition it to?
So
I guess tell a story of that.
For me, it was always Infused Tea Company. And then I had a DBA to do business as the Hooker Tea Company in downtown St. Pete. It was in essence kind of like a franchise, but it was a licensing agreement. So I had a lot more freedoms and luxuries in how I wanted to kind of run the business, what I wanted to tailor and attack, and what I wanted to pursue within the aspects of making it successful. Tea was the number one focus, but compared to we attempted to have another location open up, they wanted to be more food focused, food centric, still had a strong focus in tea, but they kind of really cut down on the merchandise aspects and kind of the materials there. And so we got to see how things were, what was most successful, what was the least. All in all, I did about 60% of my sales in tea. I did 25% in merchandise and about 15% of my sales in food. Stuck with the simple home good stuff, things that, you know, mom always made you kind of reminiscent and everything that way. But at the same time, you know, if you go home and make a full batch of brownies, you're not going to want to take the whole pan to your face, or if you do, you regret it.
So you own this tea company, and there was a second location. Were you part of the second location, or was it completely separate?
Initially, it was completely separate. Had the opportunity to kind of buy it and take it over. I kind of viewed it as I'd rather put 100% effort into one than 50% effort into two of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I opted out of it. That location ended up shutting down. They didn't last a full year. And after we did the whole entire separation of ties and such there, they only lasted like another 3 months after that.
Got it.
So I feel there could have been a lot of potential at that location, but it was a much smarter move for me in terms of where my investment was and such to take care of the home base.
So you did some pretty fancy teas, I assume.
Did everything that you could come to expect. It's the truest forms of them in all regards, but some of the greatest variations you could probably experience.
Yeah, because so some of you may have had the luxury of getting some tea from Ray. From his shop. He had a pretty cool shop downtown St. Pete. Now it's what is it?
Altomar or something like that. It's a high-end fish restaurant.
Yeah, down on what is that, Beach?
Yep.
Right down on Beach Boulevard. So he was right down there. But so I don't know much about tea, but Ray's going to tell us a little bit about tea. I think so. You went into his shop and he had all these tins, and he had like just tons and tons of different styles of teas, and then they would blend teas, right, and make your own blend and this and that. So what do we need? What does the audience need to know about teas other than just, hey, Ray, make me a cup of tea and make it good? Which is pretty much how I ordered.
Yeah, it's you and everybody else. I mean, it comes down to the awesome aspects of it is the versatility, I guess. When it comes down to it, it's hard to get bored of teas because there's so many different ways that you can kind of prepare it, so many different flavors that you can expect out of it. And then if you have any kind of intentions behind it as well, if you want caffeine, if you don't, if you want something to help you sleep or relax, if you want something that's going to help you focus, you get into the pseudo medicinal aspects of your teas and everything that way as well.
You guys do some, like, I mean, I assume there was some part of that with your company.
Oh yeah. None of this stuff is approved by the FDA or any of that stuff, but at the same time, it's the same things that you find in any of your kind of over-the-counter supplements and everything there. So it's your ginseng, ginger, St. John's wort helps with reducing inflammation, a little bit of focus and such there. You can get into totally spacing out on it right now, but there's valerian root, and it's a natural sleep aid. Chamomile, lavender, they help the body relax and everything that way. It's some of it's potentially gimmicky, but at the same time, we're going, if you want to challenge 200 and 300-year-old Chinese medicine, then have fun challenging it.
Well, I mean, some of that stuff's in Fit Aid.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the other recovery drinks we have, which is obviously their same.
It's got turmeric, and we had teas kind of the same way. And then, it actually has green tea extract, and that's why I was able to have my own wholesale account with it when I had the tea shop. So,
got it.
Got my source.
So you did that for a while. I knew you when you came to Berg, you were still in the tea shop. And then we kind of had a transition where you started coaching a little bit as a kind of a side gig in a way, like a lot of the coaches had started. And then obviously, you've been full time for a little while. You transitioned out of the tea shop. What made you make that decision? Like, what were you just tired of drinking tea?
No, still do it. Comes down to watching market trends, and truthfully, in a lot of ways, there's a good amount that I was burnt out in relation to it. The new kind of upcoming group of kids, yes, I'm generalizing here. If I offend you, I'm potentially sorry, but at the same time, there might be some legitimacy behind it. But the typical younger millennials and the entitlement that they had and everything in relation to it, when the fact that the tea shop is in essence a stone stepping job. So it's to finally help kids get experience and get their feet into the water, and then have the opportunity to do school while working there and then move on to whatever path they want to take.
We're technically millennials.
That's why I said younger millennials. Yeah, I was very specific.
Got it. So the management aspect was tough, I guess, because maybe the care wasn't there.
Everything that I was trying to do to help kind of grow everything, unless they saw a direct relation to how it benefited them, I got all kinds of recoil and flack and retaliation against. And it's like all encompassing. It was everything to help the business, and by helping the business, it helps the employees.
Sure.
You bring in additional revenue, it gives them more opportunities for everything else. But they couldn't see that, and I couldn't get them to identify it. And so it was something I knew or saw an opportunity that I didn't have to open myself to that environment anymore. And so kind of separated ways that way.
Sure.
But Beach Drive had a major impact on everything that way as well. You're talking about the number one most expensive real estate in terms of commercial real estate in St. Pete.
Right.
And so the amount of tea that I needed to sell to justify my rent and such was just astronomical. I was kind of paying the man instead of trying to pay myself.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, it's everyone knows that area. It's from St. Pete. It's fancy smancy. I mean, it's nice. It's fun. Great food, restaurants and all that stuff. But yeah, that's why I always joked that Ray was actually secretly a drug dealer, because everything he had tea-wise looked like drugs. He's got his scales. He's got his
tins full of green stuff.
Yeah. Well, cool. So then after that, you started part-time coaching over here at Berg, and you came over at the original Berg, which is now where the St. Pete location is back to. But before we were in the big space, we were in the small space, and so that was cool. So you've had the full effects of it, I suppose.
Yeah.
But you started your part-time, then we got you full-time, and I guess that transition has been done. So what do you do at Berg now? What tell us your Berg story.
I'm trying to remember the superlative that you gave me. The Swiss Army knife.
That was that was it. I don't know if I gave you that or Jeff gave you that or we all gave you that. I don't know,
but yeah, in essence, it's guys call me the detail man. It's trying to make sure it's getting things running as optimally and efficiently as possible within the realms of the gym, and then trying to ensure that we can have this place as professionally kind of presented and as efficiently and optimally kind of ran. So I run a lot of the management of the aspects of the actual kind of behind the scenes stuff within the realms of the gym, and then starting to kind of take some of my past histories to see about trying to grow the company even more so when it comes to some of the other coaches and development of the business itself, to see how we can just further help to tailor and help all of our members that come in the door.
Sure. So that's kind of I guess we need to back up a little bit, because that's kind of like the tea shop evolved into like we skipped over your connection to how you got into CrossFit, but tea shop, and then you were already into CrossFit, and that entrepreneurial kind of mindset, managerial sort of like setup transition into your position here in a lot of ways, I think. But before that, I guess was rugby kind of the start of maybe making connections into CrossFit, or how did you?
Funny enough, rugby probably was one of the first introductions to my entrepreneurship too. It came down to my senior year. I was unanimously voted for a position I didn't actually apply for.
Which was?
President of the club.
Okay.
Um,
What is that? What does the president of the rugby club do?
so I basically ran the club. So I had to make sure I was supposed to have a board of members and such like that. So we had a match secretary who was responsible for scheduling all the matches and making sure that we had judges and everything that was necessary for that. Then we had treasurer who's responsible for taking care of the finances and everything there. And then we had captains that kind of ran practices and everything there. We had a forwards captain and a backs captain. It's the two different types of it's not sides, but the two parts or entities that build up rugby.
Offense and defense in a way. Maybe not the same, but
yeah, it comes down to, if you were to look at like football, you have your linemen and then you have your receivers and your rushers and such there.
Sure.
So you have the big guys that kind of take all the beating, and then you've got the fast little guys on the outside.
Got it.
That's kind of forwards are the big guys that took the beating and kind of pursued to ensure to help the ball clear out. And then your backs for the glory hogs, and they knew it, who were the fast guys that got the points and ended up making it. So there's something on the board to show it.
Right.
So it's the way the game runs. You don't have your both offense and defense, because you can have change in possession and as quick as an interception within the realms of football. But at the same time, play doesn't stop. There's only when the ball goes out of bounds, or if there's a penalty, that you ever have any stoppage, kind of like how soccer's played.
Right.
And so it's just 80 minutes, 2 40-minute halves of just going. And that's one of the things that gravitated me towards it more so than football, because it was just, there's always something you need to be doing, always some sort of movements that you're kind of rocking your way through. And so it's a lot more driven, like hard accelerated game versus 10 seconds of all out explosiveness and then 35 seconds of rest and 10 seconds of explosiveness and then sit on the sidelines for the next 4 minutes.
Sure.
Kind of that whole aspect.
Got it. So did you do rugby and CrossFit at the same time, or did you just kind of, when rugby was done, you moved into CrossFit? Or?
Yeah. I mean, we did a lot of similar training within the realms of what we did for rugby.
Mm-hmm.
It's odd object stuff and explosive kind of driving. I was very familiar with the burpee before CrossFit ever came into the realms, because in essence, when you tackle someone to the ground, it's the same as falling to the ground for a push-up, just a little bit tougher. And then you had to get up as fast as you can and then move on and do it again.
So that is the RX Plus burpee now. Yeah. You get tackled and you got to get up.
I just can't wait to lay you out in the middle of the workout. But yeah, how it kind of introduced me to the entrepreneurial aspects to it is that, unfortunately, the other people that were on that board kind of fizzled out in terms of dependability. So by the 3 months into it, I was president, I was match secretary, I was treasurer, and I was one of the captains. So I literally, in essence, ran the entire thing except for a little bit of help with running, kind of structuring practices. And so kind of tailoring that into running an actual business, it was very familiar straight out the gate there.
Yeah, that's cool.
But the camaraderie and everything like that you found in rugby, when I got out of college, I just went to your standard conventional gym and it wasn't there. And so unless my buddy was kind of visiting in town, was like, hey, let's go work out, I didn't do it. CrossFit kind of reenacted all that camaraderie. The whole, everyone's kind of showing up at the same time. We're all doing the same thing. We're working our way through it. This is what needs to get done.
Right.
And so it just very, very well fit that niche of that need that I needed to be able to kind of pursue my physical journey or physical fitness journey and such there.
Yeah. I mean, I know myself included in this, is there's a lot of people that kind of tie it back to that camaraderie that you had in one, if you didn't have it ever, you enjoy it when you do come into CrossFit. And then two, maybe you had it back in sports and kind of, maybe you don't even realize you missed it, but then that enjoyment kind of naturally comes back. It's just a familiar ground for you.
Oh yeah. And if you all of a sudden stop showing up because something comes in and then you come back in, everybody's just on your ass. Like,
yeah.
Where have you been? What are you doing? Why are you slacking? And it's like, so it really helps to kind of just push you to ensure it's like, hey, I can't miss this today.
Sure. So you started CrossFit right after college or shortly after?
I'd say within 6 months or so, pretty much.
How long you been CrossFitting for?
Graduated in 2010. So if I'd say give it a year, it's 2011, maybe 2012. That's when I possibly
7 8 years.
Yeah.
Right. Very cool.
And I've been coaching for 6 to 7, so it has to be more than that.
Yeah. Geez. So a good amount of time.
Yeah.
One of the old CrossFitters.
It's amazing how much the time goes by, isn't it?
So cool. I guess getting into some more maybe like goofy stuff, but what's your favorite movement in CrossFit? What's your favorite thing to do in CrossFit? Don't think too hard now.
Well, it's been interesting to see how things have changed for me in terms of injuries. Because like snatching and cleans and all the Olympic lifting, I've always had a lot of enjoyment in. Tearing my meniscus in my knee, I think I tweaked my labrum 8 months ago or such there. And so it's really had to kind of force some restructuring in terms of how I approach things. But I still do find enjoyment in them. I'm now learning a lot better on how to approach things prior to getting to it. So when we competed was it last year? When was Central Florida? 2 years ago?
That was
last year.
Yeah, September of last year.
The fact that I was still able to hit my 1 rep max snatch and such in relation to that, it shows that a lot of the strength aspects are still there. And so now it just ensures that when I'm smart and I know how to kind of warm myself up to be able to get to it, I still find all the same enjoyment in it. It's just like rugby, just like everything else. I kind of do that whole jack of all trades, master of none. And so I can dabble and play into a lot of different things. And so being able to kind of have that variety has always been something that works out well.
Absolutely. Some of the, talking about injuries and things like that, I think that maybe you can relate to this, but I know originally starting in CrossFit, it's just like go, go, go. And I think a lot of people still have that when they do first start up, and that go, go, go can lead to an injury.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not a meniscus or something else, but it could. What is that? How's that? I guess I know for myself, and I see that in our how we've started to coach now over the last couple of years has been more and more prevalent to train people on preparation, I guess, which is kind of what you're getting at with how you still do the Olympic lifts. Is the preparation into that is more fine-tuned, where you're spending the time warming up, you're spending the time preparing the joints. You're more conscious of how you're moving the barbell, I assume, to make sure that you're doing things safely and effectively and working towards being stronger and eliminating injury or not having any injury. I guess, is that true? Is that kind of the route with having those kind of come up within fitness? You're still able to do everything, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's some of it comes down to knowledge has been kind of the power in relation to this, and then age and being ignorant and immortal and all of that. It's what I think the biggest thing is that when I first got into it and I got really big into the competing and everything to that degrees, it's not sustainable. And so it was just a matter of time where I was exceeding that capacity and that injury does come. So I was a ticking time bomb in relation to it. Now that I'm a little bit older, I don't recover as well as I used to as well. And so it kind of comes into the facets of that too. Quality of movement is something I've never jeopardized. It's from day one. I've always been extremely technical in the way that I approach things. Or at least
the detail man.
Yeah. Or at least I attempt to. And so that's one of the biggest, I feel, one of the biggest caveats that people enjoy about my coaching style, or that I hear the most comments about, is how technical and scrutinous I can be in relation to movement patterns. And so quality of movement I kind of always had there, but the actual like physical capacity and what I was capable of doing, I've had to learn that over time. The education aspects that we've done to try and make ourselves the best coaches we can be has just further kind of reinforced or educated me to be able to realize what I was doing was just, I was sticking time on, but nothing of what I was doing was sustainable.
Yeah, right.
So I can look back at it or now look at that and realize that really quick. If you had asked me to show me that back then, I would have been like, all right, guys, let's see what we can do. Let me prove him wrong.
Yeah, that's it's more relevant, I think, than in the younger beginning years of CrossFit, I guess, than it is now, which is a good thing. So you know, you're one of the more technical coaches. You program, you know, so you can obviously you can appreciate that aspect of it, but yeah, I mean, what else? I guess before we end this, you know, what's something that we'll get into the what is something that no one knows about you? No one knows about you. And then shoot, I forgot my other question. What did we ask it? We asked everybody else. Maybe that was only it. I thought we had another one. Well, think about that one. What is something no one knows about you? And then I'll think of the other question.
I mean, like beyond the realms, like anybody at the gym probably knows about me, is I was pseudo strong-armed, forced into doing ballroom dance classes with my sister because her boyfriend was worthless, and almost competed competitively in ballroom dancing.
Really? Well, there you go. So, ladies, if you need a ballroom dancing partner,
I can't say I remember all of it, but
and then what is? So I remember what I was thinking of two questions. That was essentially the one question, but everyone answered it similarly. What is the one thing that you cannot like? What's your biggest pet peeve?
In relation to what?
Again, the technical stuff. What anything? What is it? What is a pet peeve that other people do that, or like Nikki can't stand styrofoam, Amy can't stand balloons, Jeff, I can't remember. What the hell Jeff say? Something along those lines too. Nails on a chalkboard.
Well, I remember him talking about the styrofoam when we were outside the other day too.
Yeah, he didn't care about that.
I mean, can't say I'm bothered by balloons or styrofoam. I mean,
I would say Ray's pet peeve is coming in anytime we're doing something. He'll come in and tell you. He'll tell you a better way to do it. Like, what are you doing? Why would you do it that way? It's a good thing to have. But anyway, if you think of something, let us know. But otherwise, you guys, this is Raymond Ritola, the technician, here to help anybody that has some issues with injuries or coaching, whatever. That's what he does here at Berg. And hope you guys have a wonderful day. If you have any questions, visit info@Burg CrossFit or just ask one of the coaches when you guys come in. And thank you guys very much for supporting the gym during this weird COVID time. Hopefully it passes soon and we're back open and rocking and rolling.
Oh yeah, love to see your guys' faces again in person, more so than just through a Zoom screen.
See you guys.